Alright, so I've gone ahead and I have all of my footings for all of my piers in place now. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get the internal columns here set up. So at the intersection of B3, C2, and D2, we have concrete columns. Those, we do not have a dimension given for those, but they appear to be the same size as the piers. Now if we look at our details, we can see that the location of these concrete columns, those sit on the finished floor and they have a pile cap beneath them. So these columns go from the finished floor, level 1, up to level 2. Now the way that columns are done in Revit is that actually pretty much anything, we've already done it with the walls, anything that's structural goes on the level below. So to place these columns, what we're going to do is go to level 2. So we're going to open up our level 2. Even though it's not a structural plan, we can use this to place our columns. Our column grid shows up because it's an infinite vertical plane, so it shows up in this view as well. And we can go to Structure, Column. We're going to use that 16 by 16 column, but in our options here, we're going to check, instead of unconnected, level 1. And what that's going to do is it's going to set the bottom of this at level 1. And we can come in and, again, it's at B3, C2, and D2. If we go back to our foundation plan, we can now see those columns. If we go to a 3D view, we can see that those columns are at level 1 and going up to level 2. And now we can place the pile cap beneath these. So we can go to Structure, Isolated, and this time we're going to load this pile cap. Now the pile cap, again, is not the correct type. So we're going to edit type, rename, and our pile caps are 6 feet. So that's 72 inches by 72 inches. And they're 2'4", so they're 28 inches in depth. I'll just show that right here. So the pile caps are deeper than our typical footings. So 2'4", or 28 inches. I'm going to hit OK. We're going to change that foundation thickness to 28 inches, and then 72 inches, and 6 feet, whatever, same thing. Hit OK. And now we have the right pile cap. And we can simply place those at the column locations. Now we can finally put in our steel columns. So we have a steel column at B2 and then all of the perimeter locations. So for that steel column, we're going to go just the same as the concrete column, Structure, Column, only now we're going to change the type to, we're going to use the W10 by 33. It's not called out in our drawings, so we're just going to use something. As long as we have a symbol of a beam, or sorry, a column, we should be fine. But again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to level 2 because it's drawing it below the level that we're on. And we want them to be on level 1, so we're going to switch to level 2. And I have to go back and restart the column command. And our level 1 here. And now we can just simply go around to each of the intersections along the perimeter. You have to think a little bit about where these are. For instance, B2 is the one in the middle. And you come down to here, but we don't go down here. We have to come in here for the L shape. And we're just going to place these columns. Making sure that when I click, I have both of the column lines highlighted. I can go back to my foundation plan and you can see all these columns. I can go to 3D view. And there they are. Now this column, we still need a footing under that. And if we look at our detail, it just says see plan. It is 1 foot 2, just like our footing below here, but it's at the finished floor level. And because it'll place it at the bottom of this column, it'll show up in the right place anyway. So we'll go to our foundation plan, isolated footing. We need a rectangular footing, but this time we need a 6 foot by 6 foot. So we have to, again, edit type, duplicate, because we don't want to change the one that we've already created and used. So again, 72 by 72 by 14. And then we can change this to be 6 feet and 6 feet. Hit OK. And now we can place this foundation under that column. And there we go. Now there's one more thing we want to do about these pile caps. We want to see the piles. So to do that, we're going to select each pile cap, or all the pile caps I should say. I'm holding Control to select multiple objects. And then we right click, override graphics in view by category. And what we're going to do is make these transparent. We're going to take the transparent surface transparency slider and put it up to 100. Hit OK, and now we can see through the footings and we can see those piles. Now you'll notice that there's a hatch on these columns because we are cutting through those columns. So now we can override graphics in view. We turned off the surface hatch on a column. So this column here, or this pier, we're looking at the top of that where our section is, or our plan is cut, if you will. These we're cutting through. So these we're going to have to override in a different way. We're going to do by category, but we're going to come down here to cut pattern, and the foreground, so this is being cut, the other one was a surface pattern. So we hit OK, and that hatch goes away. At this point, we're essentially done. All of our geometry is in place. Now it's basically just a matter of dimensioning, putting notes, so basically annotating. So I'm going to just show a handful of annotations that should give you all the tools you need to complete this project. So we need to dimension the wall thickness, foundation wall thickness, and the footing thickness, or I should say width. Now these are typical dimensions, and again, just like before, what I like to do is take this handle and move this out so that it's easier to read, so that we're not covering up the wall, and it automatically puts that leader on. Now these are typical dimensions. If I double click these dimensions, it opens up this dialog. This dialog lets me modify my dimensions as needed. So I can actually replace this dimension with text if I wanted to. I don't. I want to keep the dimension, and I can use these text fields to place additional text above, below, in front, or behind as a prefix or a suffix. What I want to do in this case is a suffix, and I'm going to use our type parentheses TYP for typical, because this is a typical dimension. All of our foundation walls are 1 foot thick. It may reposition this a little bit, so you would do that for the 3 foot as well. Now over here, for one of these dimensions, this is a typical dimension. However, what I want to do, I'm going to double click that dimension. I want that to be below my dimension line. And that's a nice, neat way of putting a typical right below that dimension line. So that's how you would do those. For leader text, I like to use the text command on my quick access bar. You can also go to annotate, text, and then you'll get this contextual ribbon, and you just have to look at the pictograph for what you want. We want a 2-segmented leader, and we want the leader, I always choose these top two. The leader should always come off of the top line of your text, no matter which side it's coming off of. I want it to be top aligned and left justified. So the way that these work, once you have a leader selected, is just like AutoCAD, you click where you want the arrowhead, you click a second time to start the landing, a third time to end the landing, and we're going to type 12. Actually, I think it's just, no, I do think it says 12 inch. I'll have to check the notes, but 12-inch reinforced concrete wall. That might not be the right note. Let me double check that. 12-inch reinforced concrete wall, typical. So let me add in typical. You'll also notice I do not have the size correct, because what I did was I forgot to check my type. So my type is 1/4 inch. I want this to be 3/32. The other thing I can do is I like my arrowheads to be filled. So I can go in here and edit my type, come down here to arrowhead, leader arrowhead, and change this to, instead of arrow 30 degree, we're going to do arrow filled 30 degree, and it makes a nicer arrow. Now we need another leader to go up to this wall. So to do that, if we just select this, our contextual ribbon shows that we can just add a leader to the left side, and it puts it right there. We use the handle to drag it to what it's pointing to, which is that wall there. So you're going to use that for the slab note, and as well as the notes for all the columns. The general notes down here, same thing, we just need the note text. This time I'm going to change it to 3/32 before I place it. And now I'm going to come back up to my contextual ribbon. I don't need a leader for this. I just need text. So I can draw a text box in this area, and I can type my notes. And you can even use, this is kind of like Word, you can come up here, I can make a numbered list, and I'll just look at the drawing for what these are actually saying. I'm just doing an example here. Click outside of it to finish it, and then what we do want to put a box around that. The box around this is pretty simple. We just go to Annotate, Detail Line. We're going to change our style up here to medium lines, and we're just going to click the rectangle tool, the draw tool, and you just click 2 points and it draws a rectangle. Simple as that. This is a detail line. It will only show up in this view. Last thing we need before we put this on a sheet is a north arrow. That's a symbol. We're already on the Annotate tab, symbol, and the first thing that comes up, we only have 2 symbols, but the one that we want is the north arrow. We click there, and we're essentially done.